Local authorities, councils linked to nearly every aspect of our lives and are responsible for a range of services such as education, care, waste management, cultural services, and planning. Scottish local government consists of 32 elected councils. These are known as local authorities. Each local authority is different in size and population and operates independently of the central government and are accountable to the local people for the services that they provide. Local authorities are important because they deliver the vast majority of public services in their local area and provide community leadership. So here are some of the responsibilities of the 32 local authorities in Scotland. So we've got stuff here around primary and secondary schooling, nurseries, care of the elderly, protection of vulnerable children and adults, public parks, community centres, leisure centres, swimming pools, community transport, some of that, maintenance of roads and pavements, Scottish Welfare Fund, refuse collection disposal, and there's loads of other examples on the screen too. So many services that councils run are mandatory or statutory. So this means that by law, councils must run them. So for example, schools, social care, homeless prevention, food hygiene inspections for cafes and takeaways, rubbish collections and recycling. A lot of council work is done in collaboration with others, including members of the community, the police and the NHS. Councils receive their funding from the Scottish Government and they also generate their own income through council tax and other agreed taxes. Their funding is generated the funding generated is used to fund council services and staff. So now moving on to talk about what a councillor does. So there's no set job description for a councillor. There are certain meetings that you're expected to attend, but beyond that, the role is largely up to you and your party, if you represent one, to shape as you see fit. Much of the day-to-day work of a councillor takes place outside of formal meetings. Councillors serve and represent the community, so for example, by responding to issues from local people and keeping the community informed about local issues and events. So some key roles and responsibilities that councillors in Scotland will take responsibility for include helping residents with queries and issues, also known as casework. This could be talking to constituents by the phone, email and letter, social media, home visits, drop-in sessions, street or community meetings and local events. Keeping in touch with the community to understand local needs and new ideas. Preparing for formal council meetings by reading reports and considering what to do about plans and issues. Attending council meetings to represent local people's views and needs, debating key issues and voting, and making decisions and monitoring the work once it begins. So councillors work collaboratively with local organisations, police, health partners and businesses, as well as help make plans and take decisions to shape the future of the local area. As a councillor, no 2 days are the same. Being a councillor is all about giving back to your community, bringing your energy and hardworking attitude, getting stuck in and making a real difference to local people and to wider society. Research shows that over half spend at least 26 hours per week on formal council duties, with many spending more than 16 hours on informal tasks such as responding to constituents or preparing for meetings. It's the most flexible of any paid elected role. The absolute minimum requirement tends to be attending 2 full council meetings a year. The role of a councillor varies depending on what kind of council you're a member of and whether you're in the administration, so running the council, or whether you're a member of the opposition group, and whether you hold a portfolio or a ward councillor. So councillors have the benefit of having ward colleagues, which is making it possible to share responsibilities and avoid duplicating each other's works. Councillors may also have one or two partners from the same party as them, but usually it's the case that there's a mix of parties and independents represented in a ward, so being able to work cross-party is an essential skill for councillors. We have a fantastic guide that we're going to be sharing with you after, which has all of the info and more in it. But the best way to learn more about the role is to speak to some women who are already doing it. So we're going to move on now to chat with our two guest speakers. So I'm really delighted to welcome our first guest speaker, Councillor Lana Reid McConnell, who was elected in 2022 to represent the Victoria Park ward for the Scottish Greens on Glasgow City Council. She sits on the city's Administration Committee, Integration Joint Board, Net Zero and Climate Progress Monitoring City Policy Committee, and Victoria Park Area Partnership. There's a lot of acronyms and I was engineering and Master of Science in Sustainable Engineering. She's previously worked as a sustainability consultant and teaching English. So yeah, really grateful to have you here, Lana. I'm going to kick us off with just a kind of intro question.
Is it my internet or is it
And we
yours?
just frozen for everyone else. Ellie!
Um, I mean, I could just kick off with the intro
Or
question
do you
for
want me to jump in?
starters.
I've got the questions and everything.
Oh,
I think the first question Ellie was going to ask was, can you tell us a bit about your journey into politics? What were you doing before and how did you end up becoming a councillor? And
yeah,
hopefully, whilst you answer, she might be able to rejoin us.
brilliant. Yeah, no, so thank you so much for the intro. And I guess just firstly to thank yourselves at Cllr and the Young Women's Movement. I think if we didn't already know that these spaces are really important, the Engender report that came out over the weekend has really highlighted that. So I'm really glad that you've helped create this space where we can share some of the experiences and just build solidarity even cross-party. So thank you. So yeah, what was I doing before I was elected as a councillor? So I was elected 4 years ago now in 2022. As Ellie was saying, I studied engineering, and the way I first came across local politics was when I was doing my masters at Strathclyde University. Um, Me and some friends had organised an evening, and it was hearing from different women on their different career trajectories. And I so happened to live in Denniston at the time, where Kim Long had just been elected for the Scottish Greens. Absolutely brilliant person. So she came along and shared a little bit about her journey. And to be honest, I didn't really know what a local councillor did. She shone some light on it, but she also made the offer to everyone in the room if they wanted to come out and find out more, go door knocking with her. So I decided to go along, and she'd already been elected, so she was going round chatting to residents, picking up casework, and um, the variety of things that came up on the doors, as Ellie's already kind of outlined, councillors have so many responsibilities. So, you're talking a lot about bins, but also things like road safety, the local parks, like the condition of local parks, education, social work, whatever it may be. Um, and yeah, that was a real insight into just how much the council was involved in. And I remember, I think the second or third time I went out with Kim, this was in like 2016, 2017. And there was a local constituent of hers that had basically been picked up by the Home Office, was due to be deported, and this was somebody who was really active in the community, and she was able to sort of mobilise a really effective campaign to stop that deportation and bring this resident back to the community. And like that did two things for me. It really angered me because I felt like it was such an injustice, but it also showed me there is real power in our local representatives and yeah, people power as well. Like lots of people got behind that campaign. So I think that was a really beautiful moment for me. I think I was about 21 at the time. And it took me a couple of years to actually join the Scottish Greens after that. But I kind of had a bit of a role within the party. I think within the Young Scottish Greens. I think I did a communications role, like an ordinary member. It's a really good way to dip your toe into party politics is to take on one of the committee things, whether it's in your local branch or the main party. And after a few years of doing that, we're quite a small party. It's probably quite different to one of the bigger parties, but they were really looking for somebody to stand in the Victoria Park ward in Glasgow in 2022. So about 6 months before the election, I decided that I would give it a shot. They didn't have a Green councillor there before, so it was a kind of you might get it, you might not. But I was in a position in my life that I was able to kind of throw the kitchen sink at it, and it worked out. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that will follow that more traditional kind of will study politics and be involved for a long time. But I think it's really beneficial to have come from a different angle as well. So yeah, that was me.
I'm really sorry, everyone. My Wi-Fi has decided to just like give up. So I'm now on my hotspot. So I'm hoping that that stays secure. Really sorry to have like missed the first question there. But yeah, I guess just following on from that, Lana, I guess for me it would be really good to know, has the reality of actually doing the job and being a counsellor matched what you thought it would entail when you chose to stand?
Yeah, so I remember doing like some sessions on the run up to it with some existing councillors on what it would look like. So the setup of the council, the committees, the different responsibilities. Um, I think it's you can only really know so much until you're actually in the job. So the first thing I would say, if you do end up standing, you do get elected. If you feel an overwhelming sense of panic at the variety of things that are coming into your inbox, that's totally normal because it is quite yeah, it's very varied, and I guess yeah, depending on what council you're in, it can be quite a large volume of stuff that comes in quite quickly. But yeah, I think for me, I was supported by the party to like understand a little bit around what would be my responsibilities, and also how to sort of think about identifying local issues, working with local communities, and sort of identifying projects of that. And generally, your party will have a manifesto that you know that you're trying to work towards, that you're standing on within the election, and then trying to get implemented in your term. But I think a lot of it as well is learning on the job, because you are dealing with loads of different issues across education, health, housing, social care, both working with stakeholders within the council, but also out with the council. And yeah, I continue to learn all the time and find new varieties of casework that I didn't even know would kind of be directly my responsibility. So yeah, I think in some ways it has matched expectations, but in other ways it's constantly kind of evolving.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think like following on from that, it's obviously that could be quite a varied role. So how have you find kind of balancing a typical week in your life alongside like other roles and responsibilities you might have? Because I know in the previous sessions we've run, there's been some conversations around can you do it as a part-time role and what's that dependent on? So it'd be great to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, totally. So when I first started in 2022, I was still working my other job as a sustainability consultant part-time. And I'll be honest, I found that really difficult. They were very understanding and supportive, but at the same time, it's two very different worlds. And both worlds kind of needed quite a bit of flexibility. So sadly, I had to leave that job. Whereas now I work for an MSP, and I work for him 10 hours a week. A lot of people will do that. I think it's one of the spaces where you can find that kind of understanding and same balance, and they know that maybe you need to have greater flexibility on your counsellor end. So I would say I'm in a position where I don't have any dependents at the moment, so it's a lot of evening work. So a lot of Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, I will be at meetings or events, as well as doing like a full day of work on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, tail ending the Monday and the Friday. There's a lot of community events that you will probably want to go to over the weekend. As well. But I think that yeah, one of the first things, if you do get elected, you'll want to throw yourself into everything, and sometimes that's okay to give yourself a bit of time to do that, but eventually you will find your balance and realize where you can and can't spend time, and find your own priorities, and ultimately to try and look after yourself, and therefore kind of be the best representative you can be. Because yeah, I think it's as we're kind of highlighting in the intro, Ellie, that there's certain absolute core responsibilities that if you don't meet them, that's a standards question issue, and you might then lose your seat. But then the range and like extent to which you could be active on committees or in the local community is so varied after that. And obviously, if you want to be a good representative, then yeah, you will also want to be as present as possible. But yeah, managing the diary is difficult.
Yeah, I can't imagine like the amount of directions you must get pulled in like between the community and like the official council work. Like it sounds a little bit crazy. But in terms of what really you highlight there, which I think is really important, is that part on how you do look after yourself and do what's like best for you and prioritize yourself. And so I guess my next question would be around the challenges that you've faced as a councillor and how have you looked after your well-being throughout them and maybe what advice you might have for prospective candidates.
Yeah, I think um, finding a really good inbox management system when you first get elected and speaking to other people about how they do that as well, because you will get a lot of casework in, and it's keeping track of that. That is definitely something that I would prioritize. When there's time off, do take it, because there's basically, I mean, for us anyway, there's about a month in July where there's not any official committees. And then you've got like an October week and an April week, and then you've got time over the festive periods. So I think at the start, I um, struggled to relax. People tend to live in their ward. You're so accessible via social media. You don't just get people reaching out with casework via your email. It's kind of it can feel like it's from all angles. So yeah, finding those that. Taking that time off, setting good boundaries around that when you log into, yeah, if you are using a certain social media platform just for your councillor duties, yeah, just being mindful of when you're tuning into that, and not because ultimately if you get some good rest, like you will come back and feel fresher, and it'll give you some space to think about what you're doing and reflect, and so yeah, I think just finding the right boundaries that work for you, and making sure you take time off. I think another thing that we've tried to do within our group of counsellors is really, we have group meetings every week, but we also try to create space for a bit of reflective practice, coming together to share things that have maybe been difficult, to figure out challenging meetings or challenging pieces of casework. So, if your group doesn't or your counsellor colleagues don't already have something like that in place, maybe trying to either have a connection with one or two counsellors like that, or yeah, create a space for the whole group to share and learn from each other, because they're going to be your biggest allies. You do have a lot of stuff that you're working on together with your political party members or cross party, but you will often find yourself like yeah, you're cutting about dealing with things on your own. So it's really good to have those spaces where you can bounce things off with people. So don't sit and hold on to a challenging situation yourself. I think is really important.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And then the final question that I've got for you is, what would you say has been your biggest win as a counsellor so far? What do you feel most proud of?
Mhm. Yeah, it's so hard. I was thinking about this. I think for me, I have really enjoyed over the past few years just building up those local community connections, and like yeah, there's been a few local projects, whether that's kind of supporting like community sports facilities or growing projects or big sort of road safety improvements. But yeah, there's also been I've chaired the Net Zero Committee for the past 4 years, and been able to be therefore quite close to the climate work in the council, and really pushed for certain wins within that. We're not in the administration, but we work very collaboratively with them. I guess we're sort of swaying power in the council, which means that we get these sorts of positions. So I'm proud of that work and really understanding the policy space. But then I was kind of thinking, I feel like the scariest moment for me was you talked about these full council meetings, and members have opportunities to bring forward motions, and if you bring forward a motion, you're leading the debate. So I think yeah, the first time standing up and leading a motion and getting that passed was probably the scariest thing, and therefore maybe one of the bigger achievements. 'Cause I think once you've done something once, it does get a little bit easier. But that was around passing a policy to have legal graffiti walls in Glasgow, and part of that was just to create safer spaces for artists or people who want to try it out to go. And yeah, there's one on the Clyde side, and there's a couple others, but yeah, if you're interested. So that's a bit of a scatter of some
Oh,
big
that sounds such great
achievements.
examples. Next time I see like one of the graffitis, I'll make the connection. But yeah, thank you so much for answering my questions, Lana. And if anyone in the room has got questions for Lana, please keep them in the back of your mind. So we're going to come back and do an open Q&A after we talk to our second speaker. So on that note, I'm really delighted to welcome our second guest speaker, Councillor Chloé Robertson, who was elected in 2022 to represent the Irvine West Ward for the Scottish National Party on North Ayrshire Council. Chloe's a member for the Health, Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care. Having been elected at age 22, she was the youngest councillor elected to the council and is currently the youngest woman currently elected in Ayrshire. She was named one of the Young Women's Movement's 30 under 30 last year and is North Ayrshire's Young People's Champion. Chloé also works as a policy and participation officer for Aberlour's Children's Charity. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us this evening, Chloé. So I guess just starting off in a similar vein around a little bit about more about your background and what you were doing before you were elected and why you decided to stand to be a councillor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ellie, and thank you, Lana, for sharing your experiences. It's really interesting to hear from different areas as well, because I think it actually makes a big difference. Like a city kind of based and maybe more rural. But I think that's something we can reflect on maybe a wee bit if people are interested. But yeah, I think people would typically think that I'm the kind of career politician because I've come in so young. But that's personally not really what I see myself as. My why for politics is I grew up in poverty, and I just saw so much around me in my communities. I was homeless when I was about 4. Um, the a councillor helped my family out of that situation. And that's been told to me, even though that's a Labour councillor, so it's not my political affiliation, but he did actually stand in my ward that I represent now. And that's something that I'm really grateful for, and I kind of got to experience what a councillor can do. Although I guess nowadays it's a bit more constrained than it used to be, especially in terms of housing. But yeah, I think I never planned to be a politician, even though I'm one so young. Honestly, I just had a lot of life experiences that kind of shifted how I viewed things. I just felt a big sense of injustice by a lot of things that had been going on in my life at quite a young age. Like I was a carer, for example. I had experienced sexual violence and stuff like that. That kind of shaped what I wanted to do with my life. At first, I kind of got involved in like community development stuff. I used to be a member of the Irvine Community Council. I was the youngest member there. Youth work, a lot of youth work opportunities, and then I got elected to be a member of Scottish Youth Parliament for Cunningham South. And in that role, I also led the health and wellbeing convener. So that relates really well to my cabinet post as well right now. But yeah, and it was always about advocacy and just trying to improve outcomes. It wasn't really too much about party politics. But having said that, there was a big, obviously, the independence movement ignited something for me personally that I just kind of thought that I would just join the party because I was interested in politics. But I didn't really get involved too much in the kind of internal party stuff. It was literally, I had relationships with the councillors and did a lot of shadowing and a lot of community development and stuff like that. But when I went to uni, and I did study politics because, to be honest, I didn't really have that much ambition when I was a child. I didn't have time to think about it, and I just kind of ended up in uni. It did really feel like by mistake, and it wasn't until I was 21, and I was just doing my dissertation, and I had my uni application off to be a secondary school teacher in religious education. and I was asked to stand by my ward colleague now, and it was a 50-50 seat, so I wasn't 100% sure. It'd been held by another party for a long time. That member sadly passed away, but he had a big personality vote, so that does differ as well. Like sometimes it really matters about the person, and sometimes the party kind of aspect plays more. But yeah, that's kind of like my why and like how I ended up where I am.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Chloe. It's just and being so honest about your experiences, because it just shows that like you might end up in a position that you didn't ever imagine yourself being in. And as someone who's graduating on Friday, like hearing your journey from like uni and studying politics is really inspirational to me. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I guess kind of continuing on that kind of more reflective angle, what's one thing that you wish that you had known when you were at the start of your journey? Like if you could go back to and tell yourself just after you'd been elected, what would you say?
This is something I'm so passionate about now because I've reflected on this so much. Is that I really, really, really wish that at the start of my term I wasn't as scared to speak out as I was. When I came in, there was a lot of press attention on me because I was the youngest. I was a young woman. That as well, like most younger councillors are actually men. I've, I'm quite lucky in my council area to have a few men who are a wee bit older than me, but I can relate to them really well, and that's been really helpful. But I definitely think it's different for younger women, and I've kind of experienced that. As soon as I was in that council chamber, I said maybe one sentence and it was picked up straight away, and then seeing the social media comments, of course, I'm 22, so obviously I cared a lot about what people thought. So I kind of thought to myself, right, if I don't want to attract attention, I need to be very, very careful on what I speak out about and be very selective about what I say. And to be honest, my biggest regret in my term is just not saying what I thought sometimes. Although I could always make those views known privately within my group or during committees or briefings or other things that wasn't live streamed. But I think as soon as that live stream was on, I held back a wee bit. And that's not something I do anymore. I definitely make sure that I've got my views across because, to be honest, nobody's words can hurt me more than that regret, to be honest, because this is an amazing opportunity and I'm there to represent my constituents. So I just have to keep going at it. And I would say that to anybody, like, don't let any kind of intimidation or, external stuff get in the way of what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I guess like in terms of, is there any other challenges that you would like to highlight? Other, I guess obviously that's one, and I guess specifically around how you've navigated looking after your well-being and balancing the role with other areas of your life. Kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't good at it. I wasn't really good at managing my mental health with everything, especially with this cabinet position. It's a really, really, really difficult time for social care, and as a cabinet kind of structure in a council, you get full responsibility for whatever happens, even if those decisions can kind of be decided due to lack of funding or elsewhere. So it is really difficult, and I think as well when you care so much, you want to fix everything, and not a single councillor can fix absolutely everything. And I think that's been really challenging for me because I care so much and I've been so involved. And but it's actually just recognising that sometimes that you're one person. You can't change the world, but you can change things for the people that you communicate with. You can find those partnerships. You can help people in your constituency. But for me as well, if I could go back as well, boundaries is a really, really important thing. And I think Lana mentioned that as well. It's so important. I think my council phone broke at one point and I started giving my constituents my personal, and that is something I should never have done. Absolutely big no-no. Or there's sometimes an expectation that some councillors would visit people's houses because that's what councillors used to do. That's not something I've ever done. I think that is a really uncomfortable position to be put into. So I think it's about making sure you are clear on what your boundaries are and make sure that you're strong on it. Just because other councillors have different standards or boundaries doesn't mean that you need to conform to that. And also just stay off looking at social media. I do it all the time, but I think like that there's a point where you kind of need to pause on it as well. So those probably things would help your mental health if you did more of it.
Yeah, I think that point of social media sort of came up in our last session as well, and I'm sure we'll maybe get into it later and later on in the kind of more open discussion. And then just final question, the same one that I asked Alana around what's kind of the thing you're most proud of? What's your biggest win?
So I think like in a kind of policy kind of vibe, it would be more around improving the offer for foster carers, doing a lot of work to bring health and social care planning into community planning. And that's reflecting on, we do a lot of chess work. It's about public health approaches to managing health. 85% of health outcomes are determined outside the traditional health system. So it's about trying to find those kind of innovative ways to make sure that people's health is better, and preventative approaches and stuff. But I think on a everyday level as a councillor, the thing that makes me most proud is the casework aspect. Is when you get a win, it feels amazing. And I think as well, there's something to be said about having younger women in these positions as well, because I get so much casework around domestic violence or about children and young mums who are usually disengaged and don't reach out for support. I've had so many constituents contact me, and they might not even be in my ward, but they reach out in terms of my young people's champion role, and I'm able to support them through that. And they even just hearing I felt like I couldn't tell any of my other ward councillors this, so it was really nice to just chat this out with you. I think that's something that's made me feel really proud, even though it's not something that you can really measure or anything like that. It's something that stays with me probably more than most things.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Chloe. I'm now going to invite back Lana to join the conversation and we can move into our kind of open facilitation. So I hope you've all been like quietly thinking of your questions. So if you do want to ask a question to Chloe or Lana, then please put it in the chat, or you can also use the raise hand function if you would feel more comfortable just speaking your question aloud. Does anyone want to kick us off with the first question? Don't see anything in the chat. I don't know if Rosie or Eleanor, do you guys have any questions on the top of your heads you can start with? Oh, Kessin, go for it.
Hi, thank you. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing both your experiences. That was really interesting to hear, and yeah, a lot of insight. I think one of my main questions is just so obviously like you both have other jobs alongside being a counsellor. At the beginning, I think on the slides it was written there was 26 hours of formal council business and then 16 hours of, more casework type stuff. Like how do you find that you do manage to strike a good work-life balance, or is it a question of it kind of becomes a bit your life? I'm just wondering because obviously I think values are really important when you work. I think it's really hard to do a job without passion, but then managing that day to day.
Such a great question. Lana or Chloe, just one of you want to kick us off first?
I'm happy to kick off. Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a really important one. I do know councillors that work full time and manage their duties. But that's not something I personally could do. I do part-time hours, so I do 3 days a week with Cllr, as said. And to be honest, my job's really flexible, so I'm really lucky that I get to really mend and mould how that work looks like. I think I said that I did want to be a student teacher before I got into politics, and when I did do student teaching for a little while, but that was impossible. Like doing teaching and council work was near impossible, and because you can't work in the same local authority that you are a councillor in, you have to go further afield for that as well. So I think it really, really depends on what job you've got. I find that my work-life balance is sometimes it's really chaotic and sometimes it is really hard to fit everything in. But I've always managed that. Sometimes it does mean the weekends. There is a lot of evening stuff. But as long as you're taking the time, I do often feel though that the expectations for younger councillors to like perform better maybe than other councillors is something that I've kind of noticed. You've got a lot of councillors who are retired, but maybe they don't put in as much of a shift as maybe even you do with another job. So it really, really depends. Like, there's nobody there, you know, counting how many hours you do or anything like that. It is really flexible. But your point is well made. If you're getting into it, it should be because you're passionate, and you should be really, really trying to put the hours in with it as well.
Thanks. Lana, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I'm stressed like 80% of the time. No, but I mean, it definitely used to be more stressed, and I think that that has been a big part, a big journey for me in the past 4 years, like we've kind of talked about in terms of, yeah, just figuring out how to manage it. And it's putting in things like, you know, you get a lot of emails actually blocking out some time where for me I need to not be disrupted and try and yeah 3 or 4 hours that's my time to go through all my casework or an hour a day or however whatever works for you basically, but it's trying to make sure that you are kind of diary managing and like putting in the hours for the different responsibilities. um yeah, and I think that, Chloe's put it so well in terms of like, you do have an immediate kind of extra pressure because you're the young woman in the room, and even like in local in like local community council settings or local community organisations, like you generally are always going to bring the average age down by quite a bit, and I think that one of the frustrating things is that you do end up needing to work harder for that respect to build. And I remember really noticing, like I have two men councillors or the other councillors in my ward, and you would be at meetings, and if somebody was asking a question, they would direct it to them rather than you. I think I remember going into one of my first community council meetings, and one of the people had said, "Oh, I thought it was just a wee lassie coming into the room," and there was another guy in the room that very quickly pulled him up and was like, "No, that's like the local councillor, that's Lara, like whatever." Um, but yeah, it's definitely been a journey, but also realizing what of that you need to take on and you don't, because as much as some people will have that impression of you, you've got just as many allies in the room. Doesn't matter the gender, so it's also trusting that a little bit. But yeah, so it's a journey trying to figure out how to balance. But I think finding your people who you can speak to about it, that are going through the same thing is really valuable and important.
Thanks both, and thanks for the question. It's a really good one. Next on my screen is Heather.
Hi, yeah. So, Chloe, I know you mentioned obviously being quite young when you first kind of got into council, that there was quite, not like media attention, but that you were kind of aware that things that you said would be kind of talked about more. Is there any kind of advice you'd give or how you dealt with that, knowing that people were kind of had more to say about it? Any advice on that front?
Yeah, I think for me at the start, I really struggled with it. I would look at comments and take it right to heart, and um, yeah, and to be honest, just talking to other colleagues is really, really helpful. Although they might not be able to sometimes fully understand what it feels like, I feel like being such a young woman, my life is on social media, so I really do care about
Yeah.
what people say on it. But for me, I know this probably doesn't sound like the most professional advice or anything like that, but I just think like you've been elected just the same as absolutely every single other person in that room. Like you have just as much
Mm.
right to be there. when the press are picking up on you, it's usually because, you know, there's an interest there. They know that it causes controversy. And these people don't know you like at all. Like they've got an idea of you and they might affiliate you with your party. I've really grown over the past few years that I've kind of developed a mindset that I know who I am. And if somebody tries to tell me another thing, you know, there's something else for them to kind of look at. You know, I mean, they're looking at someone on a screen and just making assumptions quite a lot of the time. So it is really hard. To be honest, I have looked into therapy as well because at one point, well, for me over the past year, it's been really bad. But I think you just need a really good support network. But I feel bad like talking about it because of how hard it's been for me. But I really would I wouldn't want somebody to go into it without knowing that that is a possibility. Because it is really difficult. It can be, but it's not something that should completely put you off if you think that you can manage it and you've got a good support system in place to kind of cope with that. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, I suppose just on the back of that, because where I would be standing, like I've lived in the same area my whole life. Like I grew up here, so everybody does kind of know me, even from when I was younger and stuff like that. So there's always that concern of like, what are the people that I know going to think about it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one actually, because I've got friends that kind of were like, "What's that all about?" You know, and there's a lot that goes on behind headlines that people don't see sometimes.
Yeah.
And things get framed a different way. I've got a very political local authority, so definitely check how political your area is because sometimes they're not that much. Mine has press releases all the time, you know, and you know, I'm just unfortunately the one that attracts the most attention.
Yeah.
So it does put a target, but my family really struggle with it. I know my dad, he really, really, really struggles with seeing comments and stuff like that. But I think the people that really, really know you, that's what matters. And I just would make sure that you keep that in your mind who you are and not let other people kind of mess that about or anything like that.
Yeah.
It is really hard because I'm in kind of a kind of more remote area as well, so I do know everyone, or they at least know my family.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do worry about how I look to other people, and sometimes my family have commented things about me without knowing, but you just have to kind of face up to it a wee bit, but also know that again, there's loads of people that will be around you that want to support you, and it is manageable if you build that mindset.
Thanks, both.
Yeah.
So I can see you've still got a couple hands, and we are rapidly running out of time. So I'm hoping we can get through another couple of questions. We've got to finish up. So Faith, do you want to come next?
Yes, thank you, Ellie. So I was just wanted to ask, so for example, if you were mentoring someone who wanted to kind of stand as a councillor next year, what would you tell them to focus on like right now? Like would it be for example, canvassing and kind of getting your name out there in your community? Like what would you both advise? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Lana, do you want to jump in with this one first?
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, canvassing, door knocking is a really important one. You're picking up the local issues, you're getting used to speaking to people and kind of also responding to them in the moment. And even door knocking for other elections, like you'll find that if you're door knocking for like a Scottish Parliament election or a Westminster election, you will still half the time get something that's related to the council come up in the door because it is the frontline services that the council is dealing with. So yeah, getting out door knocking, finding if there's a local councillor of the party of your choice already existing in that area or in a neighbouring area, asking, can you go out with them? I'd say join your local community council because you will spend a lot of time going to community councils and getting used to like that the way that those work. I think that is two big ways. But also maybe already sort of think about the issues that are important to you, and maybe you have a personal journey and there's something that you are really familiar with within the systems of the council, and even just trying to understand a little bit about, well, how does that work at the moment? What is the party that I represent? What's their manifesto and policy position on it? And yeah, just sort of testing that out and how you would advocate for it. Yeah,
Thanks, Lan.
basically.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would basically just concur with everything that Lana just said. I would say as well, like if there's like little volunteering things you can do, like maybe um a cleanup crew thing going on in your local community or something like that, definitely go to things like that, because the people that work in those spaces will really appreciate that kind of early communication, and that does mean a lot.
Thank
Guys.
you.
We've also got a question in the chat from Sarah, which says, "Hello, how do you put yourself forward and make your interest known to a party and standing?" So obviously it'll be a little bit different for every party, and we do have resources on that which we can share after in the kind of stand to be a councillor guide. But I guess what's both of your experiences succinctly?
So I didn't know I was going to stand. So I actually ended up missing the application deadline. Usually my party puts out an application, and it's out right now for the SNP. And they, yeah, once you just put in an application form, then they review it, and then you get vetted, and then you kind of go from there. It's all online for us. Well, last time it was like all online, so I don't know. It might be different now. I've heard it might be a lot different for us now, but yeah.
You might have cut out. Is it just me?
Yeah.
Can someone else speak?
Yeah,
It's just
I
me.
think you're back now, Ellie.
Oh, is it back? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know what's going on there. Sorry, Lana, do you want to also?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no, similar to Chloe. I think, yeah, obviously, if you know what political party you want to be a part of, then do join up, because then you will get the communication, which, yeah, as Chloe said, the SNP are already doing their selections. I think for us, the Greens, we will be doing call-outs for candidates in about August, but are already trying to organise some sessions. So, which I imagine other parties will do as well, where some of us as existing councillors are going to create some spaces where people can come along and, similar to this one, ask a bit about what it's like. And yeah, we'll tend to, you'll put in your sort of statement, your personal statement of sorts, and you'll generally need somebody who is a proposer and a seconder of your candidacy. And for us as well, we have internal party hustings. So the ward that you want to stand for, it might be that there's a few people that want to stand for it, so then it would be contested, but you would have an opportunity to sort of make your case to the branch, and the branch members would then vote on it. So definitely, if you know what party you want to be and you're not in it yet, then do sign up so that you can, because everything will be kicking off over the summer for sure.
So, and then I think we've got time for one last question from Kat. You've got your hand up.
Hello, thanks both. Really interesting. I was just had a quick question on like prioritizing your causes, like both when you're standing and also if you are a councillor. Does that like primarily come from the party that you stand for, from residents, from things that you are kind of passionate about? Like, how do you go about when you are responsible for so many different things, like prioritizing what things you're taking forward at what time?
It's a really great question. Don't know who wants to kick us off on that one.
I don't mind. I can go first, I guess. I think, yeah, it's really, really difficult to prioritize because there's always so many things. And some, like, I would say I've got some very long-term projects. Like, it is very difficult and long in terms of getting stuff done, even just making some road safety improvements. Like, it can take years. So it's kind of figuring out what are your longer term projects, but also having enough space to respond to issues as and when they come up, because things will always happen, especially think like, yeah, with a city like Glasgow, there's always things coming up, and obviously you don't need to respond to everything. You've got your group that are all kind of collectively got portfolio spaces, but I think it's important to have to sort of identify some stuff early on, but like also be kind of flexible. And I think just the nature of you will find that if you stand for a certain party, people will maybe come to you naturally on certain things. Anyways, but yeah, I think it's just important to be present at your the sort of community groups and the community councils to be able to pick up on the local issues and identify and the policy, like for the policy committees, if you've got your portfolio within your group, you will generally sit on a relevant policy committee, and committees have work plans, and so there will be certain topics, and you'll kind of get your own, you've got your manifesto, you'll find your own pace in terms of how to incorporate, your own party's manifesto and policies into that policy committee work. So, sorry, that's a bit vague, but yeah, it's so varied.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like the past year, my priorities had to be my cabinet position. I'm really interested in the kind of committee structures that a lot of councils have. We don't really have that. It's more like a person holds it, just as like you would think the kind of government does, but it does vary across Scotland. So a lot of my attention the past year has been on that, and I kind of have had to prioritise that. And that has sometimes meant that I've missed a community event that I really, really wanted to go to. I think it's really important that you keep that communication anyway if you've had to like reprioritise some stuff. For me as young people's champion as well, that's a voluntary role. But it's making sure that young people's voices are heard through all of our decision makings. And I do dedicate quite a lot of time to that as well. So yeah, it's about responding to kind of what's happening at the time. And for me, just because of the nature of my job and my portfolio, that's just kind of meant more of that. But yeah, I think surgeries are really important as well. I don't really get a lot of attendance from it, but even just being present there is quite good, and it gives me an extra space to kind of catch up on all the things that I was kind of missing as well. So yeah, there's so many priorities, and it is a bit crazy, but you'll know when you see it what you need to prioritize at the time, I think.
Can I add one thing really quickly? I just realised something we've not mentioned, which just because Chloe was talking about her role as convener for social care, which is so impressive, by the way, and it must be really stressful. But one of your big responsibilities as a councillor is to set a budget every year. There has to be a balanced budget set, and I think that has been a really difficult process. I also sit on what's called the Integrated Joint Board for Health and Social Care, so as Chloe probably does as well. I set two budgets, the councils and the HSCPs. And we are in a time where local government budgets are really, really strapped. And I think we were elected just out of COVID, the cost of living crisis, and it's just, all these kind of compounding crises that keep getting worse. So I think familiarising yourself a little bit with that process prior to being elected is really important, speaking to people about that. Because for me, that has been one of the most stressful sort of periods, because the budget process starts like December, January, you set it in about February, and then you deal with people are dealing with the aftermath of it. So yeah, just thought I should throw that in there because it's,
Oh,
it's
definitely.
bad.
That's the craziest time.
Yeah. But you can also find improvements, we wins within budgets at the
Yeah.
same time. Yeah.